Rizzle kicks there, and because it is Monday, and it's about 6:30ish, we're joined by Lily from Unity Books. How's your Waitangi Day going, Lily?
Is it Waitangi Day?
Yes.
I got confused between last weekend and
Auckland Anniversary weekend last Monday, but today's Waitangi Day.
It's good.
Yes. Have you been remembering New Zealand's past and the birth of a nation?
Actually, ironically, I read a C.K. Stead poem called Waitangi Day this morning.
Without realising it was Waitangi Day.
Without realising
what
at
a
all
strange
that it was Waitangi Day.
And he's talking about Waitangi Day. How about that?
Typical of me, doesn't it? Just spoke to poetry. I don't feel like I'm tall enough.
Sorry, I'll slump.
Make me small.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about a book with potentially one of the best titles ever.
Yeah, it's a screamer. It's one of those ones like, oh, why didn't I think of that?
Why did I or why didn't I?
Why didn't I? It's such a good title.
Do you want to bang to Mary Camille? Why be happy when you could be normal? Good title, right? Do you often think that?
What's that?
Why be happy when you could... Do you often find yourself thinking that?
No, just one of those types... No, not necessarily that question specifically, so I was never really going to come to that title on my own, I guess. But it is a goodie.
So it's an autobiography by a woman called Jeanette Winterson, who is a fiction writer, a fiction author. She also writes children's sort of... What did I call it the other day? I said it was middle-aged children. So that's like teens. Middle-aged children. She writes for middle-aged children. And she also writes screenplays. And her first book ever, she's very prolific. She's a really highly regarded author. And in fact, if you haven't read any of her fiction, which she hasn't actually put out a new adult fiction title in a while, but if you haven't read any of her fiction, you should definitely endeavour to.
Yeah.
One of my favourites is Art and Lies, but Written on the Body, the Passion book, which is also really interesting. There's tons.
Cool.
But her first book was called Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, and that was...
Not a great title.
She's really good with titles, yeah. And that was autobiographical as well.
Okay.
Although it wasn't entirely, so she maintained some kind of like fictitious control so that she was able to go in
an autobiography just must be so tough to write. Like, you're putting everything out there and all those awful parts of you that you don't want people to know about. They have to go in there as well, otherwise it's not really
Well, yeah, but what's interesting about that is that you can choose your scope.
Yeah.
So a lot of times some people will do like a complete tell-all, like the Keith Richards bio, from beginning to end, you know. But she's just focused on a certain period, two certain periods in her life. And the first one is introduced in the first book, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, which is actually being made into a BBC series, so you can watch that as well. But she was adopted, and she grew up in just out of London, quite far out of London, in North England. And she was adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Winterson, and Mrs. Winterson was, by all accounts, a deeply depressed woman.
Really?
Yeah, and so her childhood, deeply religious, deeply depressed, and her childhood was mired in this woman's craziness, basically.
Stemming from her inability to have children, having to adopt?
Yeah, that might have had something to do with it. She was a sort of an impenetrable character, so Jeanette never really understood why she was so depressed. But also in those days, it wasn't diagnosed, so you just kind of had to suck it up.
You were just always sad.
Yeah, or crazy.
Yeah.
So this book, Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal, is about her childhood. It's sort of a book in two halves. It's about her childhood and her relationship with Mrs. Winterson. And then in later years...
how she refers to her as Mrs. Winterson, not Mum.
Oh no, she's not the kind of mumsy lady.
Yeah.
And then the second half is really about her going and finding her birth parents. And that's less about the relationship that she may or may not have with them and more about how that affects her. I find adoption really interesting. I'm not adopted, but I find it fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Because you couldn't possibly know what it would be like to grow up in an adopted family without being adopted yourself, or maybe having an adopted brother or sister.
Yeah, and it always seems problematic. Like, no matter how well-intended, every single adopted person that I know is... Really? Special in a particular way.
I know one adopted person. She is quite special in a particular way.
It's just that you can't shake it.
Weird way of phrasing.
Well, you just can't shake the fact that someone, no matter what their reasoning, didn't want you when you were born.
Okay.
And that's something that haunts people. So that's a line that runs through this story. And if you know her fiction, she writes often about love and about loss, and so you can understand why she's been plagued by these topics. Okay, so it's called Why Be Happy When You Can Be Normal. Of course, pop down to Unity Books in Auckland or Wellington, or along to their Facebook page. Give us a like, because you are posting your reviews that you're doing as well. Yeah, there's posts of the BFM reviews and also links to these reviews. and all sorts of other amazing opportunities on the Unity Books Facebook page.
Awesome. We're going to go to a bit of Opossum now, which Cody from the
Oh,
Chicks,
good.
yes, and Big Ronga. Did you see them at Laneway?
No, but I heard I was at a friend's house yesterday and they were playing the album, and it was very good.
We'll check it out. We'll be back soon talking more books with Lily. Opossum there with Getaway Tonight. Beautiful song. Cody and Vic just hanging out making awesome music. Vic on the drums. No big deal, eh? What a talented lady.
Vic, do you want to tell everyone else what you just said about Vic?
I really want to meet Big Ronga. I love her.
Because?
She's multi-Chinese. And we're all a bit racist.
You.
And we're all a little bit racist, which brings us to the poll segue. Are Kiwis just a little bit racist, or even a lot? I don't know. What do you think? Well, overwhelmingly, at least the last time we checked in, yes, we are. 73.474%. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. But I think everyone's racist, we were just
Yeah,
saying.
we
You know?
were.
It's not like you can think of a counter-example of like a non-racist country.
Switzerland.
Well, they're neutral, but doesn't
Yeah.
mean they might be racist on the inside. They're
They
just
might
not
be.
going to vocalise it.
Yeah, they just keep quiet and, I don't know.
Sit on the fence.
Yeah, exactly.
What Swiss people do.
But did that sort of inspire any discussion? You saw the poll earlier in the show? Before you came in?
I went out. I have to go to this family thing. I've been at a family thing. I'm going to go back. And I failed to ask a significant number of people. I'm sorry. But I did ask someone else, and one person, and they did say that they thought... And
100% result.
100% results, yeah. This is amazing. They said that, interestingly, we're sort of like unanimously racist. So it's not just one race against
that's
others.
true.
It's, you know, interracial racism.
Yes. That's so true. Which
is quite interesting.
We do have like anti-Asian sentiment that seeps through every now and then, and these anti-Pacific Island, anti-Māori...
There's a difference
Within it,
between
though.
racism and oppression as well. Like, racism is just for no reason not liking someone.
Yeah.
But then there's another kind of racism, which is racism for a reason as well, which is when...
Well,
yeah, but
Racism for a cause.
That sounds interesting.
But what about when your race has been oppressed by another race?
Yeah, okay.
And then you hate that all those people because of what they've done to your people over the years. I mean, look at Native American Indians.
Yeah.
They
Jews
must
and Germans.
hate people, you know, the original founding settlers of America, of the
Yeah.
United States of America, and they've got good reason to be racist.
Yeah. Do you believe in an affirmative action? Like, you know, going...
How do you define that?
Well, as a classic example, maybe this isn't the right example, so I'll just say, do you believe in something like scholarships for Māori and Pacific Islanders to get into university, so that maybe, let's say,
Balancing.
a European of the same skill set will miss out to someone who may not have scored as well in an exam, but you need to... I agree, I think you need to have scholarships for Pacific Islanders, underrepresented people in things like medicine and that sort of stuff. I believe in that. A lot of my friends don't. They think it should be a meritocracy. If you're smart enough, if you're the smartest, then you get in.
But I mean,
don't
and that
buy
seems to make sense, but
It
we're
makes
not
sense.
in a country that is equal, you know?
Exactly.
Like, you can't decide to be equal in one facet, but then not have equal opportunities available to other people
And,
and the
yeah,
rest of it. It just doesn't even out.
The thing with meritocracy is that it just assumes that we all start on an even footing.
Right.
So
Which we don't.
while, let's say, someone who gets a scholarship into a university over someone who's done better in an exam, they may have had to overcome so much more in life, so much more oppression, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I totally agree in scholarships for people who come from certain backgrounds.
Yeah.
And more of that, I think we could go even further. I don't quite know what that is.
I don't know, I think maybe instead of going further, we could go backwards a bit. Like, I remember thinking the idea of trying to neutralise everything. Like, I think the National Party is really pro this, like, just starting with a clean slate and going, we're all here, you know, you can't sort of blame people for the sins of the forefathers. You know, it wasn't us that did that, so we can just start fresh.
Yeah.
But I had a really interesting Māori lecturer when I was at AUT, and she said that that's impossible to do because it's easy for people who've never been hurt by the mistakes of the past, but you can't just kind of, you know, if I was like horrible to you for years and didn't talk to you and was evil to you, yeah, and then eventually I was like, hey, should we just do this again? Just forget I was a complete dick.
Yeah, no, it is. It's
I don't think you
impossible.
buy it.
No,
you know?
wouldn't. So you're for neutralising then, or you're not?
I'm not for neutralising. I'm for going back. You know?
I'm for the idea of neutralising.
Yeah.
I'm definitely. I wish that the world was that simple that you could just go, all right.
All right, everyone.
Yeah.
Start over.
Forget that I punched you in the face. That's fine.
I was angry. I was drunk and angry and blogging. Thank you very much for coming and having a chat to us, Lily. Just quickly, what's
Can
been
I
some
explain
other...
the title?
Yeah.
Because that's a good story.
Please explain
Very
it.
fun as well. So Jeanette Winterson is also a lesbian.
Yep.
And she knew this from a very early age, but obviously Mrs. Winterson not so keen on this.
No, she doesn't sound like the most open person, Mrs. Winterson.
No. And so she was actually, when she realised that Jeanette was a lesbian, had gay tendencies, she declared her possessed and tried to cleanse her by keeping her in the coal hole.
Did you get the exorcist to come in or something?
Pretty much, yeah, for like a week, and she wasn't fed. And I mean, it was horrific circumstances. But eventually, when Jeanette kind of pulled herself together and was like, "Look, I'm in love, and I love women," and her mother looked at her and said, "Well, why be happy when you could be normal?"
Ooh.
Interesting, eh? Like that's what Jeanette's particularly good at, is summarising something with so much behind it, and in a few words.
Just because, yeah, that cuts through so much.
Yeah, and
That's
that means
gnarly.
a lot. You can see that woman, right? You can feel her presence standing before you, dominating your childhood.
Oof.
Great,
So,
great.
Why be happy when you can be normal?
Yeah.
Question mark. Head along to Unity Books, facebook.com/Unity Books NZ as well. Is that the Facebook address?
Not sure. I think you just definitely search for Unity
yeah,
Books
yeah.
on Facebook. I think
Yes, and we will
that's
pop
the best
up.
way.
We'll be the only ones. Unity Books Auckland and Wellington, we have individual pages.
We'll have a lovely dinner party with the family.
Thank
this
you.
evening. And
We
we're
will.
going to go to... What are we going to go to now, mate?
You were telling me about all the celebrity appearances, or the
Oh, yeah. So Connor interviewed Benga of Magnetic Man earlier in the show. We had that interview. This is a video with just electronic music producer cameos everywhere. Shy Effects featuring Deneo and Roses Gabor with Raver.